Thank you for joining us this evening. This is our parent welcome workshop. Usually we would be doing this in our back room at the office. Obviously with COVID, we're doing this on Zoom. I'll be honest, I struggle with presenting over Zoom. I much prefer to have people in front of me where we can have a bit of back and forth. But we should be good as we get through this. My jokes are less likely to work because I can't see the reaction. So I keep jokes to an absolute minimum. So let's get started. Oops, sorry guys, as people enter, it's gonna slow down the presentation. So what we're gonna be working on today is looking at the club information, our structure, going through the pedagogy, curriculum design, the developmental pathway, and then the logistics towards the end. This is gonna be an introduction. We're not going to go into great depth of the pedagogy or the curriculum design. This is something we're going to do at a later date, where throughout the season, we'll host more Zoom workshops in which we will go into a little bit deeper, get a bit more engagement with you as parents back and forth, and help support the whole kind of parent education from what we like to do with the club. Everyone is on mute. If you're now just joining the chat, please use the chat function for any questions. Travis is operating chat function for us tonight, and he'll pass any questions on to me at the very end. And the presentation will be provided to everyone over the next coming days. So first of all, welcome. A quick introduction to who I am. My name is Dyer Redwood. That was me a year ago. I haven't had a haircut since, so now I look a little bit more like a caveman. It was pretty close. I think I've aged a lot as well in the last 12 months. But I am the executive and sporting director of Fremont Youth Soccer Club. I'm currently enrolled in my master's for the Advanced Performance Football Coaching. Going very well so far. Touch wood, that continues. Also a degree in sports coaching. I'm a UEFA B licensed coach for both senior and youth players. I've already gone along the pathway of the NSCAA, now known as United Soccer Coaches Development Pathway for Coaches. And I've also had experience through traveling to many elite academies throughout Europe, mostly the Netherlands and Germany. And with the way the German coaches are operating right now, I feel incredibly grateful to have been able to visit these academies. So as I mentioned, grab a pen and paper. And just for a moment, just take a look at the tree just on your screen. This will make sense as we go through the presentation, honestly. So all we're going to ask you to do now, don't want to see that yet, just draw yourself a tree. So just take a look at the tree and then just draw yourself a tree. Give you about 30 seconds. The artists among us go wild. The rest of us who lost our creativity in childhood, a stick tree will be fine. So if you're just joining us right now, just quickly draw yourself a tree. Again, just 20 seconds should be enough to jot something down. If you haven't got a pen and paper, just visualize your tree in your mind. That will also work. Okay, so unfortunately, we don't get the engagement as we would do in person, but feel free to post any response in the chat. Be honest, what does your tree look like? Does your tree look just like the one on the screen? Were you influenced by what you see, and did you replicate that tree? Did you remember to draw the roots? The picture's deliberately leaving out what's below the surface. So did anyone remember to add the roots into the picture? The reason we started with this, and it's to kind of frame the way the meeting is going to go, is we're easily persuaded by what we see or influenced by what we see in front of us. And we often don't consider the roots or the foundations of the players that we witness throughout our program or those that you'll eventually be competing against on the weekend. And we're too quick to compare. Without the background knowledge of an individual and a youth player, we can't really compare player to player, and we shouldn't. Every player is unique. A little bit like snowflakes. Snowflakes are made up of so many molecules, it's unlikely any two snowflakes are exactly the same. It's like an individual soccer player. Everything from the moment they're born is going to be completely different to any other individual. I even did a quick research to make sure that was true with twins, and it is. Even though we perceive them as identical twins, there are environmental factors which will change them. So as each snowflake is exposed to slightly different conditions, to even start with identical crystals, they won't be the same. So it's important as we start on this pathway, and for those of you who maybe been with a club before, as your younger children start to come through, it's important that we don't compare players against each other. And some of you might be thinking, oh, we just had evaluations. This doesn't make much sense. You've just done that. But we're going to touch upon that pretty shortly. So hopefully, if you don't take anything else, if I'm already being placed on mute, if there's anything which you take from this presentation is we can't compare players against each other, especially in the youth environment. So we're now going to look at who we are. All this information can be found on our website, and we'll also share all the links to our website where this information is shared. We aim to provide a positive and nurturing environment for soccer players of all levels to develop their soccer ability and human element, with all players having the opportunity to be a club member no matter the socio-economic situation. Youth sports should be fully inclusive. No youth player should miss out on the opportunity to play, no matter what the sport is. Our vision is that through innovative pedagogical methods, players will be addressed as an individual element made up of complex systems to advance not only their soccer playing ability, but also their develop as a human being. Too often, we look at the youth soccer player as a professional athlete, and that's very detrimental to their future success, not just in youth sports, but as a whole, as their human element. We look to develop the player as a human before a player. So the holistic approach takes into consideration how the pillars of a player's development are all connected and contribute to the whole person. It is also a connection between the individual, the club, and community we serve, and these shape the behaviors of all club members. This information tonight is going to be brief, and if you go onto our website, you'll see where we got our core values from. Research in the history of Fremont is quite an incredible city, made up of 5 different districts. It has its own unique identity through 5 different local regions. So through that, we were able to come up with the different values which match Fremont as a city. And we added these into 3 main areas: empathy, community, and inclusivity. Again, for the reasons, check our website. Creativity, innovation, and empowerment, and also fun, commitment, and excellence. And these values will contribute to a positive youth sport experience for each and every player. It's now the responsibility of us as the adults involved in youth soccer, parents, coaches, program leaders, to make sure that we provide the right environment to make it a positive experience. The behaviors is something we expect from everyone, whether it's from the coaches, the players, the parents, the board members. These are the behaviors that we expect. We've also, for the players, though, separated these into the different stages of learning. First is the fundamental stage, where presentation is the first behavior which we expect. Are the facilities, do they look after the facilities in which they use? Sometimes we're on turf fields, grass fields, but do we take our litter away with us? Do we look after the equipment in which we use? Are we respectful of the facilities? Presentation of ourselves. Are we always looking to present ourselves at a higher level? Don't let those around you drag us down to their level. And it's not just in how you look, it's what you say. How do we interact with others? How do we present ourselves to others? And then the presentation of our actions. Can you be your best selves? How do you not just speak to others, but how do you behave towards others? Your peers, your coaches, your parents, the referees. And through your actions, can you apply effort to the way you practice or play? And play should be fun, but we can still apply ourselves when we play. When they develop in a specific stage, we don't forget those behaviors and leave them behind us. We add on to it. During the specific stage, it's expected then that players will compete. This isn't to be confused with winning. This is about competing on an individual level. Are you looking now, as you get to specific stage, you're looking at the 13-year-old to really push yourself, to really engage in your one sport which you really want to focus on to try and improve through your individual development plan. And performance stage of U19, giving yourself to others. Can you give back to the club? Are you going to be at the fields volunteering with our U6s and our U8s? Being the role model for players that are going to be coming through. You are now the players that have come through the system which the younger ones will be looking up to. Next, we're going to be looking at our club structure. So it's great to have all these values, beliefs, and identities, but unless there's a structure, it's not going to work. Our club structure is one where we have an executive board with a supporting community advisory group. We're a non-profit organization. So we do have a board in which I myself have to answer to and make sure that we operate within the scope of what they want to achieve. The director of soccer and operations. I'm the director of soccer. It's my responsibility for everything soccer related. And we also have a director of operations, the person who makes sure that we have the right equipment, the fields are available, and everything's up to a good standard throughout the club. We then have the developmental stage directors. This is Travis, who's on this call right now. He is the director of the fundamental learning. As you can see in the diagram, that's from everyone in the U8 training pool up to the U12s. And then Gavin is our specific stage director from U13s up to the U16s. And within the club, we have two separate pathways. We have our grassroots and recreation program. This is the seasonal program, and that goes from U4 up to U14. That's when you register for either the spring or the fall, or they're both completely up to you. And there's a huge emphasis on play. Or you go through the club pathway. Due to our methodologies, our vision, we're also heavily based on play and player-centered. The difference being we do enter competition. But again, we'll address competition pretty soon though, because not to get confused or underwater with the concept of a win-all mentality. Competition should be healthy, and the competition in youth development should be with yourself. So the biggest question we're asking is, how do we create the teams? How are the age groups structured? Hopefully this provides a little bit of insight into the structure of the teams, and we'll also touch upon the names pretty shortly. So first of all, we have our training pool. This is our U8s. It's a double age group, including the U7s, and this is for our 2015 and 2014 born players. These players are assigned to groups based on their birth month ranges. The recent evaluation was for you to evaluate us. This was to make sure that you feel that you're entering into an environment where your child can get the most positive youth sporting experience. That experience should be through every single age group. U9 and U10, we do the same. Players are assigned to teams based on the birth month ranges. In a perfect world, we'll have identical numbers from January to March, April through to June, and so on. But the birth month ranges do need to account for the number of players within an age group. The difference with the U9 U10 as opposed to the training pool is that it is part of the club program, it's the club pathway, and there are going to be weekend games in which we compete within the NorCal Premier Leagues. However, our focus isn't on the winning of the games. Our focus is on developing that individual player within the team environment. If we identify any players that do show any sign of early development, then it's our responsibility as a club to not only challenge them individually in their individual sessions, but also to find an additional environment which might suit them to challenge them a little bit further. Playing up is very popular in the US. It's a question more or less, can my child play up? Playing up is not simply just because your child might be physically bigger. It might not be just because they're technically stronger than other players, or a perception that they're technically stronger as other players. We've got to consider, if we're going to develop players holistically, the psychological effects of playing up on a player. We've also got to look at the social implications of playing up. Is it really right for an 8-year-old to maybe play up because they're the size of an 11-year-old? We got to think the different exposures those players are going to have, what they discuss amongst their friends, what they learn through their peers, and is that appropriate for an 8-year-old to be hearing those same conversations? When we get to U11 and U12, it does change and we do assign players based on what we believe is their current level of development in reference to the long-term development pathway. In a perfect world, this will not happen until U13. The trouble we're fighting against is the current youth sporting culture. If we don't do it and everyone else is doing it, ultimately we don't have a program. I hope that in future things change and this will become the norm, where competitive teams are not put together until U13. Unfortunately, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Going back to why players are going to be based on birth month ranges, because if we're doing it at U11, U12, why aren't we going all the way down to the U9? Some of you may have heard of the relative age effect. The relative age effect, this is where players of a certain birth month are going to be given an advantage over their maturation. So if you think of a player born in January opposed to a player born in December of the same year, there's almost 12 months different. Not only is the physical differences going to be fairly significant, especially in the younger age groups, but also that psychosocial element, the maturity, is going to be significantly different. So is it right that we put players and we base players against each other and put them into teams when there's a year difference between these two players? So that needs to be addressed. It's a huge issue. If you look through studies before the dates changed to calendar year, those born in July, August, September had a massive representation at national level and elite program level. The reason being, they were the oldest players within their programs. They were the ones identified and selected, but with a bias towards the physical development. Since the US has changed their calendar year, we've now seen the same thing in the months of January, February, and March. So it's not really right that we're only really focusing on players of only just those first 3 months. So this is why we have set up the program in the younger age groups the way we have. It's different. I don't think any other club is doing it right now. And again, I hope as people invest more in their own education and look further into the issues of youth sports, we're able to create change and we see people starting to look at youth soccer more for the actual individual youth player. So the names of your teams, we had a few questions about this. FN stands for fundamental. This is the fundamental learning stage. It does go up into U12 as well, but it's a name appropriate, I think, for all these players. And for us as coaches and parents and adults involved, it grounds us. It reminds us as to why we're here. It's for the players. It also takes away that bias we just spoke about of not only the perceived level of player due to the birth range, but also helps the psychosocial development also. Those of you who've been assigned to a team that has ID, that's identification. That's where we have identified your child has shown a development in one of the key player elements in reference to our game model. It doesn't mean your child is better than the next child. It doesn't mean that your child isn't as good as another child who's been selected as ID. What it means is, in reference to our club structure, our development pathway, we recognize that a player is showing development along that pathway. SC is for selection. And this is when we've selected players to be in a certain team, as this is what's going to benefit their long-term player development. Every time you do an evaluation, even though we're not evaluating players against each other and we're doing it on an individual basis, it is pretty much a prediction of the future. And no one can predict the future. There is nothing in youth sports that can suggest that a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old is going to be an elite level player in the future. There are studies that suggest that different practices will be detrimental to that opportunity, but there's nothing which says this player will be good in 2 to 3 years' time. Johan Cruyff is an absolute soccer genius. When going through his quotes, it's incredible how much influence he has on soccer throughout the world. You can't really say it better. Teams don't learn. It's the individuals within the team that learn. Development is a personal process, even when conducted in a team environment. That is a perfect analogy of youth soccer and what it is. We're focusing on that individual player, not the team. So to reiterate, the team placement is not best, better, or bad. The individual is our focus, not the team. We're invested in the individual player. Success in youth soccer is not defined by winning elite trophies and leagues or the bracket you play in. It's heavily biased towards those bigger, faster, stronger kids. In a win at all cost environment, there isn't room for development. When you're in that win at all cost environment, you're not willing to take risks. How are you able to coach a player to beat another player in a 1v1, which is key at this young age, if you're afraid of losing possession of the ball and the other team is going to score? How do you coach a player to be comfortable on the ball if you're afraid of having the ball anywhere near your own goal and you just want to kick the ball away? You can't. This is where focusing on the brackets, the results, the winning, the losing, the incredible number of new leagues that are popping up since COVID came around, it is not going to benefit the individual player. And the science and research backs that up. We're working against a culture that does not represent the interests of the youth player, but is more adult driven. So before we go any further, we're just going to try and frame it a little bit more to see where we all are. So I just put up a poll. I'm going to be launching this poll. We'll give you a few minutes just to go through all the different questions, and we're going to have a look, see where your perceptions are right now, or thoughts and positions are on youth soccer and youth sport as a whole. These answers are anonymous also, so don't worry if you're going to get one wrong. And no using Google, because these can be found online. We'll give it just 15 more seconds, just a little bit more. Okay, going to close the poll in 10 seconds. I did just get an opportunity to take a look at some of the questions in the poll. I did see one about the relative age effect, about there's a variation in the month. And yeah, that's 100% right. Maturation can vary from plus or 2 years, older or younger. There is no real perfect solution to maturation. There is an equation in which I'm going to share the results with everyone. There is an equation in which you can get a rough estimate of what the current rate of maturation is, and this is something we are considering in doing for our Thursday scrimmage day. You could see 8-year-olds at the same level of maturation as a 9 or 10-year-old, even if they're an early developer, and the 10-year-old's a later developer, or not later developer, on time ready for developing. So yeah, I completely agree. It's not perfect, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. Okay, so looking at the results, so let's take a look. So the first question was, how many youth play organized sports in the US between the age of 6 and 18? Sorry, technical issue here. So the answer is 45 million. There are 45 million youths between the age of 6 and 18 participate in some form of organized sports. That is massive. That is a huge number of youth players. And it looks like we're pretty close to it. Not bad answers. Okay, next question. What is the annual dropout rate between 10 and 19-year-olds? This one is sadly alarming. And I like, in a way, the answers that we've given because we've kind of overestimated. So yeah, there's 24% annual dropout rate between 10 to 19-year-olds. This is in soccer, by the way, specific to soccer. So I'm glad it's not the 50%, which we have 34% of people suggest it was. But 24% is still way, way too high for 10 to 19-year-olds. In fact, between the age of 12 to 13 is critical. That's where we see the biggest drop-off. Next question. What percentage of players have ambitions of playing college? I find this is an interesting one because sometimes the parents' perceptions don't accurately align with the youth players' ambitions. It's actually at 37%. 37% of children have ambitions of becoming a college athlete. Unfortunately, even the ambitions of the children are not quite aligned with the reality of what we face. Only 5.6% of males and 7.2% of females actually go on to become a college soccer player from high school. That's a very, very small number. These are the ones that play high school and then go through. Out of all of these, only 1.9% will go on to play professionally. That is a tiny number. Now, this isn't meant to be all negative. This isn't meant to be all doom and gloom. What's the point? The purpose of these questions is just so that we can frame how and why we're involved in youth sports. Ultimately, we should be catering for that 98% of players who don't go on to play professionally. That means we need to make it a fun, inclusive, positive experience so we can support the ambitions to become an elite soccer player in the future. The most important question of all is who will win Euros 2020. And it's good to see that we had 100% success there with Wales. So well done on that one. Okay, moving on. Just a little bit to break up me droning on for so long. So again, to frame our position on and why it is that as we go through our methodology, we do what we do. Brooks outlined that it's a disturbing cycle in new sports that with increased competition and pressure at younger ages and lower levels of play becoming more prevalent as a perceived need to specialize and compete year-round to keep up with peers becomes more common at younger ages. We are seeing tournaments for 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds. It's crazy. Just today, NorCal published their registration process for Staker from U9 to U12. That's bonkers. It's absolutely ridiculous. We're putting players in these positions, and we should know better. Not the parents. We should know better. We're the ones who've gone through the education, the qualifications. We're the ones responsible for the environment. Yet we're not listening to research or the youth player. New Zealand sport, they've seen this issue. They've seen the issue of specialization, players too young, specialized in one sport. And just to put this into context, this was largely around rugby. New Zealand are the #1 country in the world. They're the current reigning World Cup champions. Correct me if I'm wrong. I am pretty sure the next World Cup hasn't come around yet. No, they lost it. I apologize. They did lose South Africa. But before that, they were the 2-time reigning world champions. They're incredible. They had the most winning record at elite level of any team sport. And even they recognize that young people need to play sport to have fun with their friends. If they stop having fun, they stop playing sport. Focusing too early on just one sport, putting winning before skills development, and making young people train like professionals, these are problems. These aren't the solutions to trying to achieve that long-term goal of elite sports participation. And this is what frames our pedagogy. This is why we do what we do. First, we got to understand what is learning. Well, learning refers to more or less permanent change in behavior, which occurs as a result of practice. Learning is not being able to regurgitate information received. It's about how we can change behavior. Sport pedagogy specifically is the foundation of effective teaching and coaching in physical education and youth sport. So this is how we're going to coach the players. What methodologies are we going to use? But in order to be able to provide this learning environment, we need to look at 4 individual factors which come together to create that overall environment. First is the teachers, or referred to as the coaches. Are we coaching in context? Are we continuing educating ourselves to keep up with modern research and theories and best practices? The learners, the players, it must be player-centered. It cannot be driven by adults. The task, our curriculum, and our session design, are the conditions and challenges age appropriate? Is it one to provide that positive learning experience where the players can gain most benefit from the environment? And culture and interactions. And this is where you as parents can help us as well. What kind of culture do we provide around our child's sporting participation? What are our interactions with them around the youth sport participation? An emphasis on how individuals accrue and develop their knowledge and understanding through their reflective participation in authentic situations and interactions with others. That is how we develop players. We look to develop from previous experiences. We don't go into tactics at a young age, specifically because they need that previous experience of, first of all, the technical development, but not just the technical development of high repetition, but also in game situations. So for a 9-year-old or 7, 8, 9-year-old, that game situation could be just a 1v1 or a 2v1. How much space did I have to beat the player? How much space was behind the player? I didn't beat the player this time. How can I beat them next time? Did I drop my knee enough? Did I drop my hip enough? Was I off balancing the opponent? Did I fail to accelerate as I beat them? So this is all constructed, a constructivist theory. And as Driscoll points out, knowledge is constructed by learners as they attempt to make sense of their own experiences. We're not looking to mold the player. We're not looking to make every single player within the Fremont Youth Soccer Club identical or the same. The players need to reflect on their own experiences and have their own identity. These are the creative decision makers. We do that through scaffolding, which is a concept within the constructivist theory, and that is we're there to support high levels of support for the players when they're a little bit younger, and it's up to us as coaches to know when to maybe ease up on our support. Think of a building. As a building gets close to completion, you take away the scaffolding around it. It's the same with coaching. High levels of support to begin with during those foundation years, knowing when to step away, but also knowing when we need to go back in and provide that high level support again. And this is kind of known as putting in a few little speed bumps into players' development. We need failure. Failure is good. Failure is an opportunity which we reflect on the experience and make adjustments to be successful in the future. And also empowering the player. Can we empower the player to be the decision makers? Can we empower the players with having intrinsic motivation to want to develop and further soccer participation? This all has an effect on our curriculum design. Our curriculum is age appropriate. Today we're focusing mostly on the fundamental stage. Our curriculum is divided up into 3 different stages: fundamental, specific, and performance. Throughout the fundamental stage, what you'll experience is individual development plan, that's the first session of the week, small sided games, the second session of the week, and introducing this year to the U9s and 10s a multi-sport deliberate play. Youth play should be sampling different sports. Those experiences and motor skill development in different sports and the cognitive development in those different sports can be assimilated into soccer. What we're going to be introducing on a Thursday is a different sport each week. It's not going to be highly structured. We don't know all the rules. It's going to be fairly low structured. The players will be leading the session mostly, and we'll be looking at doing tag rugby, field hockey, handball, any kind of additional exposure to play of a different sport to be able to supplement the youth development. Our curriculum is separated into 4-week training blocks. It's periodized to address skill acquisition through the individual development plan, with small sided games in which we add a few little challenges and competitions within it, so it brings out the technique within that game situation. And also that multi-sport deliberate play. This is to support that age-appropriate development and make it more child-centered learning. Why are we doing it? That's always important. Why is it that we're going to take this route? So combining personal engagement in sport with early sports sampling promotes a rewarding youth experience and long-term sport success. So that 98% of players who don't make it to the elite level, they are still going to be motivated and excited to continue within sports as a whole. It's also going to help support those players who do become elite athletes to keep their intrinsic motivation, to be invested and involved in continuing to better themselves, even at that elite level. There was a study done on German soccer players, and it was about the significance of play and how it helped them develop. They found that within these world-class players, only 14% of them through their youth trainings were involved in a drill-like technical activities or physical conditioning, whereas 86% were involved in coach-led play. This is those small-sided games, those open, deliberate play activities. Only 17%, mind, of these were coach-led or conditioned, the small-sided games that we speak of. Just under 70% were just kicking around with their mates. Now that's a cultural shift as well. That's a challenge for us culturally. You don't see kids playing on the field anymore. It is up to us to try and find a way in which we can solve that issue. And through that, we have that Thursday session where age groups mix in together. Teams pick themselves, or we just randomly pick the team depending on time constraints. It's as close to street soccer as we can make it. So the development pathway we keep speaking of, we need to know what our destination is. Our destination is our game model. This is the identity of the playing style when we reach performance stage of development. We don't expect to see this until the U19s. I would not expect any U8, U9, not even our U16s to be identifying fully with the game model. It has to be age appropriate. This is what guides us along the development pathway. It provides direction and a reference. So what we're looking to achieve as we go through this development pathway is, first of all, the individual player elements. Then it's those playing elements, the playing concept, the playing objectives, and finally the principles of play. This we'll go into a little bit deeper in a future presentation. But right now, all we're really focusing on is those individual player elements. But without those individual player elements, it's going to be a struggle to be able to achieve those playing elements. I know it seems like a lot of waffle right now, but it will make sense as you go through the program. So the individual player elements, as you can see in the diagram, these are what we've highlighted as important for youth players. Now we're different to a fully professional soccer club. We're not Manchester United, Man City, Liverpool. We're none of those clubs. I should throw in a US one as well, the Earthquakes. We're not a full-time professional outfit. We don't know what our senior team, as in the adult full-time professionals, want to play like. What we have is players going through in different pathways, going to different colleges, trying out for different lower level semi-professional clubs. So we can't align ourselves to any one model. So what we've had to identify a generalized way of playing, something you see in international soccer a lot more often. And through identifying these areas, we've been able to really focus on the individual player. And again, this isn't a winning culture, but it's not possible for us to be able to achieve this if we're unable to commit to a developmental pathway. So it's important that we define what success is. Success for us is the technical development of the individual player. Success for us is empowering players so they become creative decision makers. This will bleed into other areas of their lives, their education, their full-time employment when they're older. Success is being able to support the psychosocial element of development, how they engage with others. There's a full presentation just on this one area of a soccer player's development. And also providing that psychological support to transfer what they learn through the psychosocial support into true life lessons. And even at this stage, we still need to be guided by certain principles. And again, those individual player elements. This is what every player is evaluated on, even through the evaluations. As you can see, none of this is gauged against any other player. The key at the very bottom shows you the scale is 1 of high potential, 3 they're currently developing, 5 it's the early stages. There is no better, best, elite, premier, not very good. It's about where they currently are in the developmental pathway. Think of it as your stocks. One day it goes flying up and everyone's happy. Next day it drops off. The next day it goes back up a little bit. Over time, in theory, it should always go up. Youth development is kind of similar. There's so many different elements which can affect a youth soccer player's development. But again, with reference to a game model and an actual development pathway, we're able to assess players on how they can reach those elite levels over time, not at the youngest age groups, elite levels as when they're older, 19s, 23s, and up. So for us, it's predominantly in the soccer actions. The learning stage is identified, and as you can see throughout the actions, the actual soccer application techniques, we look at the 1v1 confrontation, the variety of striking techniques, the ball manipulation, how they move the ball in tight spaces, the ability to receive the ball, and their ability to use both feet. This is important. So as they get older, as they develop, they are able then to translate this into a more age-appropriate level, a specific learning stage. So as you can see, for example, in the decision-making, the creation of space. This can come down to player movement off the ball. But creation of space as an individual level is also how you manipulate a ball. If a player is unable to manipulate a ball from a younger age, they are then able to perform that autonomously to where they can take in the surroundings, the stimuli around them, and be able to create that space from what they see in the angle, speed, and the approach of the opponent. So it's important that everything is done in a youth development sense in a linear way, but while understanding that the actual development of the individual will not be non-linear. There just has to be direction. There has to be a reason why. This is all evident in research. Several studies have shown that competitive success at the youth level only correlates modestly at best, or not even at all, with long-term senior success. You can play gold, premier, considered elite at 9 years old. That has no bearing on where you're going to be at 16, 17 years old. For reference, our recent senior team, the ones that graduated actually during COVID, we used to play in the bronze, silver brackets. We would lose 6-7-0. And in credit to those parents, they stuck with it. They believed in the process. Our final season at U19, we went undefeated in the league. The only game we lost was the very first game of the season, which was a pre-State Cup game. To be honest, one is that we approach as a pre-season game. We went through the entire season, including State Cup qualifications, undefeated. We then entered the college showcase, won all 3 games. But I wasn't proud of what they did because of those results, because of the statistics of the outcome, but the way they played. And there are videos on our website which show how it's evident in the way they play that they are able to achieve the game model from the way they develop from the younger ages. And again, being in gold and silver, a lot of people have said they have no chance. That's not how it works. There is no relation between the youth level play, the youth level performance with later stages performance. And a recent review highlighted that the participation patterns that likely lead to youth success are not the same with those that facilitate long-term development and adult success. So what we perceive and what we believe in and what we're currently doing really has no relevance to how they can develop in the long term. it's important we start to actually change what we're doing, because all the research, the science is telling us we need to do it differently. That's a little bit of background, the way we operate, why we do things. And again, this is very surface level. We can go into a lot deeper, and we'll do that in further presentations down the line. Next, we're going to look at the logistics of the program, the expectations, the uniforms, the schedules, the fees. For me, the first part of this presentation was the really important part. This is where we can really make change within youth development and make it a positive experience for the youth player. But this is now, I understand, we're parents, you definitely want to know which way the club is heading and how you can best support the player as well, logistically. We do have expectations of our players. Every player must wear the 3-month training jersey and warm-ups to practice. This is going to be strictly enforced. Part of youth sports is a belonging. It's feeling like you are part of a journey with those around you. It helps support that intrinsic motivation. It makes you feel like you're part of something bigger than just the individual or a team. We still focus on that individual, and that is our priority as coaches. But it's important that players can see the bigger picture also and feel like they have that social support around them. This helps a lot psychologically. It also helps with us safety-wise. We participate, in parks throughout the city, mostly Central Park. If we see lots of kids around the area, we want to make sure we know which kids are with our program. Every player must bring a ball with them. This is incredibly important. Every session is based on a player with a ball each. Yes, the session develops into 2v2s, 3v2s, 4v4s, and even in the older age groups when they do more tactical work, we need the balls available to be able to practice. The reason we don't provide the ball is because if we know players have a ball with them, there's more chance that they're going to support their intrinsic motivation by going outside and engaging in more kind of street activities, juggling the ball, kicking the ball against the wall, playing curbsies where they got to kick a ball against the curb and catch it on the rebound. We also expect all players to practice with a purpose and respect each other. It needs to be fun. It needs to be engaging. Fun isn't just messing around. Fun is having that element of competition with yourself and those around you. Different to the outcome orientation of winning the game, but fun does come from the challenge, especially for young players. And also it's important to respect those around us. Players will play for 3 different reasons: to perform, to become better, or just to participate within the sport itself. So we have to respect that every player there is there for a reason, and so we must respect those players around us. For games, there are expectations that every player must wear the correct uniform and bring a ball with them. Referees will be on top of the correct uniform. Do I agree with the level at which they go? Not really, but I do understand the safety reasons for it. Some of it's a little bit excessive when it comes to tape, but those are the rules, and those are what we have to stick by. We ask the players to show 45 minutes before kickoff and be ready to warm up 30 minutes before kickoff. The main reason for 45 minutes is this. This enables us to be organized. It enables us to make sure we have every player available and make sure that we know that when we start to look at how we're going to approach a game, not tactically, not how we're going to win a game, but things like player rotation, having players experience different positions, we start to figure out based on the players that we have available to us. There is nothing worse than when we're distracted because 15 minutes before kickoff, we're looking around for the next player to show up. So we do ask that everyone shows up 45 minutes before kickoff. The 30-minute warm-up is an opportunity for players to get engaged. Again, this isn't elite level. You see players now having to wear warm-up uniforms on top of a training uniform before they change into their playing uniform. We're not warming up because we're elite athletes. We're warming up because it's important that players do get their heart rate up a little bit, the muscles do become warm, but also it's more to do with their engagement within the actual activity itself. It also enables us to be able to speak with players and frame what we're looking to achieve throughout that game experience. If we're in a 4-week cycle of dribbling, we might be telling every single player that when you receive the ball, we want to see you make an attempt to beat the player 1v1. And this, again, is why we can't focus on winning or the outcome, and why we do ask parents not to shout instruction on the field. We could be telling players we want to achieve something different based on our game model, the development of the player elements. So it's important that parents aren't coaching from the sidelines. And every player is expected to show respect to the opponents and the referees. Parents, we also have expectations for you guys as well. We ask that you support the players through providing what is needed to participate. We try to keep it as simple as possible. We try to keep it as minimal as possible. The biggest part of supporting the player is basically not talking about the game in the car. That's the worst moment for most youth players, is that car ride to a game and away from the field. We would prefer a silent sideline. It's preferred and it's encouraged. This is because it empowers players to become their own decision maker. You shouldn't see any Fremont player looking to the coach for instruction. We want players to make those decisions on the field. Whether we assign the captain to be the decision maker around set pieces, so they can decide on the best approach to take a set piece on what the situation is in front of them, or whether it's a corner. We want the players to be the decision makers. We want to empower the players. It provides a positive sporting environment. It provides confidence and that intrinsic motivation. A huge one is keeping the parking lots safe. I can't believe how many times I have to send an email or speak to parents about this. We have to make sure that we're not speeding, we're not just in the middle of the road. Please park in a bay. Make sure it's a safe environment for everyone involved in that area, whether with the club or outside of the club. It is okay for a player to have a short walk to the training field. They don't need to be dropped off outside the actual gate where the entry is to the field. Park in a parking spot. If they have to cross a road or a parking area, then go with them. But please park in a parking area. Please make sure you update TeamSnap of all games and support any game day tasks. These will be communicated to you at a team level. And please use the club resource available to you to help support your parent education. We will have more parent workshops, but this is a great way to also have your own kind of individual engagement with what we're doing as a club. The uniforms. This year, we're actually sponsoring someone. We're not looking for a sponsor for us. We're looking to sponsor a local charity. And we're going to be sponsoring the Tri-City Volunteers. The uniform is new this year. It's on a 2-year cycle and purchased through My Uniform. The items that you will need is 2 full uniforms, a jersey, shorts, and socks, plus a training top. Training pool players, you don't need that full uniform. You'll only need the training top, the home shorts, or a pair of pants. That's all you'll need for the training pool. The training uniform for everyone, which is the same as the training pool, is the training top, the home shorts, and home socks. Everything is purchased online. This link will be sent out over the coming days as Millette, our registrar, will be updating your information into the database of Soccer Pro. For number assignments, we're also going to be approaching relative age effect by assigning numbers based on your birth month. Everyone wants to be number 7 or number 10, not so much number 9 anymore. It's kind of gone out of fashion. So what we're going to be doing is the number will be assigned based on when you're born for a number of different reasons. One, it takes the whole pressure of a certain jersey and expectation. Believe it or not, that does actually happen even at the youth level. Which sounds a bit crazy, but it does. But also, it frames and grounds us as parents and coaches when we're on the field. So if you're involved in a game and you get too caught up and we forget everything that we've been through and you start to compare players against others and you notice the players wearing number 97, that should highlight that this player was likely born in December. The players they're up against, they could be born in January. So it's there to help ground us and remind us that the players are individuals. We don't know everyone's backstory. We don't know the full environment in which they're developing in. And this is one way which I'm aware of across Europe in which they've started to introduce to also help with scouting mostly. So the younger players don't get overlooked because of the size of another player. In fact, it makes you focus more on the technical ability of the player rather than the physical aspect or even the decision making. Because again, maturity is a huge factor in age. So the schedules. The season's a 44-week training plan. We have 2 to 3 sessions per week, depending on what you were selected for. Training pool is always 2 sessions a week, and so is the selection teams, 2 sessions a week. Everyone else is 3 sessions a week, including the competitive or club level fundamental teams. We have an open training policy which allows you to make up any sessions missed or if you want additional practice throughout the season as desired. Personally, I feel that 3 sessions a week is too much. I don't think it's right. But as mentioned before, we're currently fighting against the culture of over specialization in younger age groups. And if we weren't to give to some of our beliefs to find a medium ground or middle ground even, we don't have a club. It's sad it's the situation we're in, but if you can't make a session, that's okay. That's not a problem. If you play other sports and you need to go and play in a practice or a game, that's not a problem. We should be experiencing as many sports as possible at these younger ages. But the sessions are there for those that do want to take advantage of them. But please don't see this as an important role in specialization. It's not. And it's why we set the curriculum the way we do. 1 session a week is your individual development plan. The second session is small study games. Third session is more deliberate play. The schedule is dependent on facility use and coach availability. Our coaches will be coaching multiple teams, and therefore the schedule is going to be balanced between the field space, the coach availability, and the age of the players. In other words, we don't want to have 9-year-olds practicing until 9 o'clock at night. The game schedules, those controlled by NorCal Premier. The opponents and the times will not be known until closer to the start of the season. It is the responsibility of the home team, generally the coach in communication with the scheduler, to decide upon the time of the fixture. While these are fixed to a certain degree, they can be changed upon agreement between the 2 teams. Therefore, what you might find is as we get closer to the start of the season, most if not all home games you will have scheduled. They are pretty much 90% set in stone. Some games will not yet be scheduled. There's likely dialogue between the coaches to find a mutually agreed upon change within the original schedule. Away games may not get scheduled up until 4 days before the actual game itself. NorCal do their best to get these games scheduled as soon as possible. But again, it's responsibility of the home team. We're only able to control our home fixtures. They generally split 50-50, and our coaches will be responsible for getting in early communication with the away teams to try and get these schedules laid out as soon as possible. But please understand there is potential for future changes in those game schedules. The practice schedule will be confirmed shortly. Due to COVID in the past 18 months, we have had a lot of players drop off, understandably. First, we had to go online for 6 months. Then we had to return into small groups. Obviously, everyone's safety was paramount. That was most important. And there are players that still want to return. Some people are not yet comfortable returning whilst COVID is still an issue. And that's completely understandable. So at the moment, there are a number of players that didn't show up for evaluations, or they have signed up their interest in wanting to return, but have not done so yet. We're pretty much 90% sure of the number of teams in which we're going to have, but it will all depend upon the registration following the meetings and also those that want to return in the future. It is our responsibility and it is our objective to get as many players playing as possible. So we want to be as flexible and open to everyone as we can. But with an understanding that as a youth soccer program, we do have long-term commitments. We do have to commit to the city for fields. We have to commit to NorCal early so leagues can be set up. And also we have to commit to insurances. There are a number of different long-term commitments that we have to go by. Yeah, we try to be as flexible, obviously with our members. What you can guarantee though is a Thursday session at Irvington Community Park. This is your scrimmaging, age group scrimmaging. We're going to start the season off by doing double age groups. However, as I mentioned earlier in response to that question, we will look at being able to try and identify the maturation rates. This will be dependent on people filling out a very brief spreadsheet, which will give us a maturation age or current rate of maturation. What we will then try and do is place players based on that current rate of maturation. This is something we'll look to introduce a little bit later. First, we'll get settled into the program, get people into understanding where they need to be, what times, and everything else, understand the program, and then we'll look to add that extra layer of how we can address the relative age effect. Also, our UA training pool, this never changes. We understand that players need to be sampling different sports, even as late as 12, 13 years old. But the one program that we can certainly put set in stone is our U8s. Every Monday and Wednesday, you'll be practicing from 4:30 to 5:50 p.m. Every Monday is your individual player program, development plan, sorry. And every Wednesday is going to be your small sided games. And we can do a little bit of multi-sport sampling also within the training pool. Our seniors will always have the same schedule. They will always be later on the Monday, Tuesday, and a little bit earlier on the Thursday. The reason being for this is at that level of performance in which we're looking for, we start to periodize the week a little bit more than the younger age groups. They need to have certain rest times. They need to have a certain level of information overload, but also the opportunity to be able to rest, not just physically, but also mentally at the same time. This will be filled out as soon as we can. Ideally, we'll be looking to do this over the next week or so. We also have goalkeeper practice. We encourage any player that wants to try goalkeeping to go to this session. You don't need to sign up for it. You don't need to register your interest ahead of time. You just go to this sign time. This is with Butch over at Livingston Community Park, and he'll be going for our own player identification for goalkeepers, where we look for players to be comfortable with their feet as well as with their hands. So, starting to come towards the end of the presentation before we take any questions, and now on to the finances. All fees are collected through TeamSnap. It's installment payments over 11 payments. You pay your initial membership fee, and that covers you for the full 12 months. After that, your 11 payments then start automated through TeamSnap. Training pool fees are always $126, the same as the selection teams, due to the schedule of only being 2 sessions a week. All ID teams are $166 per installment. As I mentioned, these installments are drawn on a monthly schedule, but these are not aligned with that calendar month. How the payments work is there are 44 weeks in the season. Each installment is aligned to a 4-week block of training. There are times in the season, depending on when you register, that you could be paying for future sessions. It could be that you're back paying from previous sessions. 4 weeks doesn't perfectly align with every single calendar month. Therefore, sometimes your payment will not perfectly align the calendar month with the training block. It's been accounted for, so in December, when we take the 3 weeks off, you're not paying for those 3 weeks. A payment will be deducted in December, but it's not going towards those 3 weeks off. It's going towards one of those 4-week training blocks. Registration is going to be due by June the 30th. It gives you a little bit of time. I think it's just over 3 weeks. Even though we don't return until July the 26th, we need the registrations paid for as soon as possible. We have to submit our applications for team participation as of July, I believe it's the 8th. We also need to start purchasing insurances from US Club Soccer as of July the 1st. It also means that if there's any changes in team sizes, we end up adding teams or maybe reducing teams. We also need to know coaches. The coaches are also committed for that 12-year period. Your membership can be cancelled at any time. The reason we chose 11 payments is we don't want to lock any period into a long-term plan. I know some clubs will do payments based biannually, a large payment at the start of the season, another one halfway through the season, maybe quarterly, but we don't believe that you should be locked in for such a long time financially. We hope that you enjoy the program. We hope that you do commit to us for the full duration, but again, we do not want anyone to feel that they're locked in financially. The only thing that we ask for is a one-time installment penalty for early cancellation. So if you cancel in week 18, for example, you'll be responsible for those training blocks. That's 5 training blocks from week 1 to week 20. Your one-time installment penalty will be for that 6th training block. If you cancel within a training block, you can complete that training block. I can provide those details for you, and it'll also be on our website. We also don't want any player to miss out due to fees. No player should miss out because of the socio-economic situation they find themselves in. As mentioned, we are a non-profit organization and we have a financial aid program available to help support those families in need. All of your applications are completely discreet and private. They only go to me. I do not share your information with anyone else, whether it's the board, whether it's other coaches or managers. This is your own individual private information, and we don't feel it's appropriate to share that with other people. In past years, I need to update this. For the 1920 season, we awarded over $70,000. That was the year just before COVID and even going into COVID. Even throughout COVID, we were able to extend our financial aid program to support COVID-specific situations where parents had sadly lost their income. We need to operate sensibly financially. We have to be able to operate in a way in which we can provide for those who might not be able to afford the program itself. But we're here to support and help as many players as possible. Yes, we do have our limits. We were also affected greatly by the COVID situation, but through proper management, we were able to come through healthy and still be able to support as many players as possible. So please don't be put off by the fees. We're actually one of the cheapest clubs around. Every payment goes central. You're not expected for any unexpected costs of the season. You're not charged for any referee fees on the weekend, any coaches fees, nothing. It goes central. That's responsibility of the club to pay those fees. By making it more player-centric, we have also not got wrapped up in the whole economic juggernaut of youth sports. It's currently estimated at 14.9 billion industry. A huge amount of that is on travel. Most costs go towards tournaments and travel. Tournaments are a huge money maker for clubs. We have our own 3 tournaments because it does help us generate funds. You now see these super tournaments expanded over different states even. They generate massive amounts of money. They also commit you to travel. It's not player-centric. It's not supporting player development. And sadly, we are starting to see that adult approach to youth sports in which making money has become the main priority of the youth sports environment. So that kind of wraps us up. We'll continue to answer any questions. I think we were close to the time we were looking for, got a little bit over. But registration links will now be sent over the weekend. I'll be working on those. And this registration will confirm your place. And so we'll need that registration by June the 31st. Upon registering, our registrar, Millet, should receive your details and she'll then update your information and will send you a welcome email. The uniform invite will also follow registration. The uniforms need to be ordered as soon as possible. Soccer Pro will order a batch of sizes in anticipation of uniforms. However, they will run out of these. They don't know either how many players are going to commit to the program. So sometimes it will take a little bit longer to receive a uniform. So this needs to be done as soon as possible so they can get their orders in. Like a lot of things, there is a backlog on different goods. One of these has actually been uniforms and been able to get them shipped over into Soccer Pro. As you go through your registration, for those of you who have been with the program before, NorCal and US Club mostly have decided to move away from Sports Engine. So the whole fast which we went through recently of online systems not working through US Club, they have now turned to Got Soccer because Sports Engine didn't live up to the promise. We've been able to transfer most information and documents over to Got Soccer, but there will be once again another system. This is out of our control. I appreciate any frustrations you have. We share them. Believe me, Millet more than shares that frustration with you after the number of hours she wasted recently in trying to get all that done. But because of the issues with Sports Engine, US Club Soccer has now put everything into Got Soccer. We will help support and provide any needed information with that process as you go through it, and Millet is there to help you with it. As I mentioned, practice starts on July the 26th, and the first game is tentatively scheduled for August the 21st. Therefore, those uniforms need to be in well in advance of August the 21st. Registration needs to be in so we can apply for your insurances and get your player pass in plenty of time. Players cannot start on July 26th unless their membership has been activated. As mentioned, we are going to be doing future workshops over Zoom, and this will go deeper into the different areas of player development. Today was a surface level introduction to player development, the club structure, and the methodologies of our program. So just to finish up, just a reminder of why it is that we're here. So I took this from a recent article I was reading. I thought it should be shared with everyone. This isn't to scare anyone, and this needs to be applied to coaches and every single adult, not just parents. I feel for parents because you always get the brunt end of the stick. The other ones always getting beaten with a bad behavior stick. And to be honest, it's the coaches, it's the program leaders. They don't provide the engagement, they don't provide the education, and they don't act as good role models on the sidelines. We are the ones who are fueling the insanity of adult-led youth sports programs. So I'm just going to give you a few minutes just to maybe read through this, and also it'll be in the presentation for you at a later time. After a few minutes, we'll then take Travis off mute and he can pass on some of your questions.